Imagine yourself settling into a comfortable position, letting your breath slow as your mind begins to drift across time. Tonight, we'll journey far beyond the edges of memory, into a place often called the cradle of civilization. A landscape shaped by two broad rivers, by dust and water, by hope and hardship. It is ancient Mesopotamia, home to the world's first cities, first writing, first taxes, and the earliest attempts to make sense of an unpredictable world. As you listen, you might let the rhythm of the words drift around you like a warm evening breeze. There is no need to follow every detail closely. The people of this land lived their lives slowly, in cycles of planting and harvesting, sunrise and sunset. And in that gentle rhythm, your thoughts may wander, soften, and perhaps even dissolve into sleep. Tonight's story reveals why you, a modern person of comfort and convenience, would struggle to last even a single day in this ancient world. And yet we will explore it with calm curiosity, moving through its dusty streets, its towering temples, its legends, and its bureaucratic halls with quiet fascination. Let us begin by stepping into the life of an ordinary laborer, someone who woke each morning on a mud brick floor, beneath a sky thick with heat, someone whose every day began with work, duty, and the weight of survival. Imagine yourself waking in the earliest light of dawn. The air is cool for only a brief moment, holding a faint scent of clay and distant river water. You're lying on a simple mat woven from reeds, placed on the hard mud brick floor of a small square house. The walls around you are thick but humble, shaped by hand and sun-dried over many seasons. They hold the faint warmth from yesterday's heat, a warmth that will grow relentlessly as the sun climbs the sky. Your eyelids open to the pale, muted glow filtering through a small opening in the wall, nothing more than a narrow slit, meant to let in light while keeping out the buzzing insects and drifting sand. You stretch slowly, your limbs stiff from sleep, feeling the familiar ache that never quite leaves a laborer's body. There is no softness here, no cushion, no blanket spun from cotton or wool. Only the minimal comforts of a world where survival requires every waking moment. Outside, the quiet hum of the settlement is beginning, a distant bleating of goats. The muted thud of a wooden door being pushed open. The soft shuffling of feet as neighbors begin their own routines. You rise, feeling the packed earth beneath your feet cool now, though by midday it will radiate heat upward like a silent fire. You step out through the simple doorway. The dust greets you immediately, rising in a light cloud as your feet disturb the ground. It settles on your skin, clinging to the thin film of sweat forming in the warming air. You breathe in the scent of the village earth, smoke from last night's hearths, the faint musk of animals. This is the rhythm of their lives. And now it is yours too. Your stomach grumbles gently. Before the day's labor begins, you receive your rations, mostly barley, the dependable staple of Mesopotamian life. Barley for bread, barley for beer, barley for every meal. A bowl of barley porridge is warm in your hands, simple and plain. There is comfort in its familiarity. A small cup of weak barley beer accompanies it, not indulgent, but practical. The water drawn from canals is never entirely clean, but fermented barley makes it safer, a small protection against the unseen dangers in the water. As you finish eating, the sun rises more fully, its golden light illuminating the flat roofs and narrow streets. The heat builds steadily, pressing down on your shoulders even before the day has fully begun. You join the small procession moving toward the fields, a quiet line of workers, each carrying tools shaped by a patient hand. The wooden handle of your hoe is smooth from years of use, warm against your palm. The fields stretch out ahead, divided by the lifelines of irrigation canals. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers are distant yet ever present, their waters guided through an intricate network of channels dug and maintained by countless hands. The system is impressive, even beautiful in a simple, practical way, but it requires constant effort. Silt builds up, walls collapse. Water diverts unpredictably. Without constant tending, the fields would dry and the barley would wither. This morning, your task is to clear silt from one of the narrower canals. The mud is thick and cool, clinging to your legs as you step into the shallow water. You scoop it out deliberately, rhythmically. The motion is repetitive and almost soothing if you allow your mind to float. Around you, others work in the same slow cadence. Some cutting weeds, others patching the walls with handfuls of clay and straw. The air vibrates faintly with the drone of insects and the soft splashing as workers move through the water. Taxes, of course, follow you everywhere in this world. You feel them in the weight of every task. Most of what you harvest will go directly to the temple storehouses to feed the priests, the scribes, the administrators who track every grain. The temple's shadow falls long across your life, even if you rarely step inside its cool interior. In this land, labor is not a choice. It is owed. It is expected. It is the base upon which the city rises. As midday approaches, the sun becomes relentless. The heat presses against your skin like a heavy cloth. You pause briefly, wiping your forehead with the back of your arm. Nearby, someone drinks from a clay jug, passing it silently to the next person. Conversation is minimal here, not out of hostility, but because each worker understands the quiet pact of the fields. Speech takes energy. Energy is precious. You return to the steady rhythm of cleaning the canal. Scoop, lift, step, deposit. Scoop, lift, step, deposit. Time stretches. The buzzing of the insects becomes a kind of backdrop, blending with the soft rustling of barley in the wind. If your thoughts drift, no one notices. The day is long and the work itself does not change. Later, there are temple duties, not grand ceremonies, but mundane obligations. Carrying water to the temple courtyard. Delivering bundles of reeds. Sometimes sweeping the spaces where offerings were laid earlier in the day. The temple is a place of order, where the priests and scribes track the flow of grain, wool, and labor with the precision of an early bureaucracy. You walk through its shaded corridors slowly, appreciating the momentary coolness. Incense burns somewhere nearby, its gentle fragrance mingling with the stone and clay. By late afternoon, your tasks take you back toward the fields, where tools must be collected and stored. The sun lowers slightly, though the heat remains persistent. The dust settles in a thin layer on your arms, on your clothes, and your hair. You brush some of it off, though it makes little difference. This world is built from dust after all, and to live here is to carry it with you. As evening approaches, the settlement comes alive in a different way. Families gather on rooftops to catch the faint breeze. Children play quietly in the fading light. You return to your small home, tired but calm, feeling the comforting predictability of the daily cycle. A simple dinner awaits: more barley bread, a small handful of dates if the season has been generous. You sit on the roof as night settles. The sky darkens slowly, stars emerging one by one in the vast Mesopotamian sky. The air cools, carrying the soft rustle of palm leaves and the muffled conversation of neighbors. You breathe deeply, feeling the day's tension loosen, even as your muscles remain heavy from work. This is the rhythm of life for a Mesopotamian laborer. Quiet endurance, repetition, duty, a world where survival depends on the land, the rivers, and the intricate web of obligations tying everyone to the temple and the city. And now, as this day slips into night, we slowly turn toward another kind of story. One shaped not by ordinary people, but by kings and legends, by rulers who claimed divine blood, and tales that echoed across millennia. Next chapter is about Gilgamesh, the flood, and the kings who thought they were gods. As the quiet night settles over the laborer's home, we allow ourselves to drift from the humble rooftops of ordinary people into the distant halls of power. The same land that supported fields of barley and networks of canals also produced stories of rulers who shaped the world, and stories of heroes who walked somewhere between myth and memory. Tonight, we explore one of the most enduring, the tale of Gilgamesh and the kings who believed themselves chosen by the gods. Imagine the scene shifting gently, like a tide pulling you into another time within the same landscape. The dusty streets soften into wide ceremonial avenues. Torches flicker against the surface of high palace walls made of carefully laid mud brick. You hear the distant echo of sandals on stone floors, the rustle of robes woven with intricate patterns. We're no longer among laborers. We've stepped into the world of ancient kings. Our story begins in the city of Uruk, one of the earliest true cities humanity ever built. A place enclosed by towering walls that seemed impossibly massive to the people of the time. The Epic of Gilgamesh describes these walls as monumental, almost divine in scale, so vast that they symbolize not only protection, but the pride of a civilization learning to control its environment. Gilgamesh, according to the epic, was 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. But beneath the poetic exaggeration was something more grounded, a king whose power was so immense, and whose will so absolute, that to ordinary people he must have felt almost godlike. In those days, kingship was not just authority. It was a cosmic responsibility believed to be bestowed directly by the gods, fragile and conditional. Imagine Gilgamesh walking along the walls of Uruk, the early morning sun casting long shadows across the city. His expression calm, almost detached, watching life unfold below. Workers hauling clay, merchants arranging baskets of figs and dates, priests preparing offerings in temple courtyards. For the king, these daily scenes were reminders of the world he shaped, yet also a world he could never fully control. The epic tells us that Gilgamesh ruled with a heavy hand. His ambitions were vast, his desires insatiable. But history teaches us something else. Powerful rulers in early Mesopotamia existed in a delicate balance. Their authority depended on appeasing the gods, managing the land, and controlling the unpredictable rivers that fed the entire civilization. Even a mighty king could see his city punished if a canal failed, or if a harvest fell short. But Gilgamesh's story truly changes when another figure enters. Enkidu. Born of clay and wilderness, he represented the part of humanity untouched by city walls and temple rules. Their meeting, initially a clash of strength, evolved into a deep companionship. It softened Gilgamesh's cruelty, reshaped his ambitions, and set the stage for the journeys that would define him. You may imagine them now, sitting beside a low fire in a quiet moment. The flames flickering softly against the darkness, casting warm light across their calm expressions. Somewhere beyond, the vast desert sky stretches infinitely, the stars steady and silent. These scenes, whether literal or imagined, reveal something gentle about ancient kings' moments where the weight of authority slips away, replaced by quiet human reflection. But the peace did not last. Their adventures together, slaying formidable forces, challenging decrees, disrupting sacred creatures, awakened consequences beyond their understanding. When Enkidu finally succumbed to illness, the epic describes the king's grief not in vivid detail, but in the heavy emotional weight that lingered over him like a shroud. Gilgamesh, once untouchable, felt his own fragility. The death of his companion cracked open the illusion of immortality, and so began his long wandering search for the secret of eternal life. Imagine him traveling beyond the edges of the known world. Through silent deserts, over high mountains, across waters that seemed endlessly vast. Yet despite all his efforts, the secret slipped through his fingers, like water through an open hand. This ancient tale is deeply woven into the landscape of Mesopotamian belief. It mirrors something the people lived daily, the constant reminder that life was precarious, unpredictable, and often shaped by forces beyond human control. Floods could erase entire villages. Droughts could silence fields. Kings themselves rose and fell like the rivers they depended on. And this brings us to another story, one that appears across civilizations, the story of a great flood. In Mesopotamia, it appears in the figure of Utnapishtim, the man who survived the waters that once swept across the land. Picture him in a small boat of wooden frames and reed bundles, drifting over a world swallowed by water. The scene is calm, almost unbearably quiet. The flood is not described in graphic chaos, but in its aftermath, a world washed clean, emptied, waiting to be repopulated. These tales shaped the mindset of ancient kings who saw themselves not merely as rulers, but as bridges between the human and divine realms. To maintain order, they offered sacrifices, built temples, maintained canals, and enacted laws that, while strict, kept the fragile balance intact. Many kings claimed divine favor. Some claimed divine ancestry. Yet all of them faced the same truth Gilgamesh eventually learned: even the most powerful could not escape the cycles of life. Imagine one such king standing in a vast temple courtyard. Around him, priests chant softly, their voices rising and falling in a measured, soothing cadence. Clay tablets are brought forth, records of land ownership, harvest yields, and temple offerings. The king watches the scribes press small wedge-shaped marks into the wet clay, each one a symbol in the earliest writing system. These records will outlast him. His reign, his decrees, his achievements, preserved in the steady hands of people who likely never exchanged a single word with him. And slowly, without breaking the calm flow of this moment, we understand the deeper truth. In Mesopotamia, kings were powerful, but they lived under the same sky as everyone else. The same heat, the same dust, the same rivers that could bless or destroy. As we leave the quiet world of legendary rulers, the soft glow of torches fades. Our attention drifts towards something even more mysterious. Structures that towered above the cities like stairways to the heavens. Silent, majestic, enigmatic. If you have watched so far, be kind to like and subscribe. Moving on to the next chapter, the ziggurat enigma. What were these giant steps to the sky? Let the imagery of kings and epics drift softly into the background, like a fading echo carried away by a desert breeze. As the night deepens in ancient Mesopotamia, we turn our attention to something even older, more silent, and perhaps more mysterious than the rulers who once walked beneath the sun. Imagine yourself approaching a city long before dawn, while a cool mist still lingers over the fields. In the faint half-light, a vast shape rises slowly from the horizon, angular, layered, immense. At first, it seems like a natural plateau, a rocky hill shaped by time. But as you draw closer, the deliberate geometry becomes clear. Carefully formed steps, straight lines, broad terraces stacked one atop another, reaching toward the soft, pale sky. This is a ziggurat, one of the most striking creations of the world's first cities. It's not a pyramid or a palace, not a fortress or a mountain, yet somehow it contains the essence of all of them. Its surface smells faintly of sun-baked clay. Its edges are softened by centuries of wind. And its purpose, even today, remains a quiet puzzle that archaeologists still contemplate. Imagine standing at the base of such a structure. The ground beneath your feet is slightly warm even at dawn, holding on to yesterday's heat. The steps leading upward are broad, each one the height of a man's knee, designed not for speed, but for a slow, deliberate ascent. The ziggurat doesn't invite you to climb quickly. It encourages a thoughtful, step-by-step journey, almost like a moving meditation. As the light grows stronger, the silhouette becomes more defined. The lower levels are wide, stable, anchored to the earth. Higher up, the terraces narrow, guiding your gaze toward the summit. Somewhere near the top, though now long gone once, stood a small temple, a chamber believed to be the dwelling place of the city's patron deity. For the people of ancient Mesopotamia, these towering structures were more than architectural achievements. They were symbols of connection between the earthly and the divine, between the dusty streets below and the vast heavens above. Yet their exact purpose remains gently uncertain. Some scholars suggest the ziggurats served as a kind of spiritual staircase, designed to bridge the gap between humans and the gods. Others believe they stood as monumental markers of political power, public reminders that the city was favored by divine forces. Still others think they played a practical role, storing important offerings or sacred objects where they would remain safe from floods. The truth may be a combination of all these ideas. Or it may be something we have yet to fully understand. As you imagine climbing slowly upward, each step echoes softly in the quiet morning air. The city stretches out behind you, modest homes, bustling courtyards, narrow lanes weaving like threads in a tapestry. The river glints in the distance, catching the first hints of gold from the rising sun. The higher you climb, the more the sounds of daily life fade. The chatter, the animals, the creaking of wooden carts, all dissolve into a gentle hum. By the time you reach the upper terrace, the city appears small and delicately arranged, like a pattern etched into the earth. At the summit, a light breeze brushes your skin. The air carries the faint scent of incense, sweet, smoky, almost floral. Priests once tended small fires here, their flames offering prayers to the gods. They moved quietly, with slow gestures, as though aware that they stood on sacred ground where the earth as breath met the sky as silence. From this height, you can see how the ziggurat shapes the city around it. Streets radiate outward. Markets cluster nearby. Homes align in patterns influenced by the massive structure's shadow. It wasn't merely a temple, it was the heart of urban life. A steady anchor for a world shaped by unpredictable rivers and shifting political tides. Some historians believe the ziggurat may have served as a kind of early observatory. Not for scientific study as we know it, but as a tool for reading the rhythms of the stars and seasons. The priests could watch the movements of celestial bodies, interpreting them as guidance for planting, harvesting, and ritual life. Whether or not this was its true purpose, the idea adds another layer to the sense of awe these structures inspire. As you picture this scene, the gentle wind, the soft light, the quiet vantage point overlooking the cradle of civilization, you may notice something comforting in the structure's design. Its layers rise steadily, predictably, each one supporting the next. In a world filled with uncertainty, the ziggurat offered a sense of permanence. a place where the spiritual and the earthly aligned in calm harmony. Even today, archaeologists uncover fragments of these structures, carefully brushing away centuries of dust. They find bricks stamped with the names of kings, offering small, silent testimonies of rulers hoping to be remembered. The bricks are warm-colored, textured, carrying the fingerprints of builders long forgotten. Each one is a whisper from a distant past. And although much of the original purpose remains veiled in mystery, the ziggurat continues to inspire. It stands as a reminder that even in the earliest days of civilization, people reached upward, not in haste or conquest, but in quiet devotion, in search of meaning beyond themselves. As we let this image fade gently into the background, allow your thoughts to settle for a moment. The world below grows quiet again, the city slowly stirring beneath the growing light, as if waking from its own long slumber. And now, with soft curiosity, we move toward the final part of our journey into the halls of scribes and administrators, where the quiet power of writing, counting, and organizing shaped civilization just as surely as kings and temples did. And administrators, where the quiet power of writing, counting, and organizing shaped civilization just as surely as kings and temples did. Let the image of the towering ziggurat slowly soften, fading into the warm blur of memory. As its terraces dissolve into the early morning light, we step gently back down into the city. But this time, we're not heading for the fields, or the dusty lanes where laborers toil. No. We're moving toward a quieter world. A world of soft clay, careful hands, and minds trained to capture the rhythm of society in delicate marks and organized tablets. Imagine yourself entering the temple district. The air is cool and shaded beneath high walls. The scent of incense lingers, drifting lazily through courtyards where priests move with an unhurried grace. Their robes whisper softly as they pass, the fabric brushing the ground in slow ceremonial patterns. These priests, protected from the harshest tasks of daily life, spend their mornings tending to rituals that mark the passage of time, lighting lamps, offering small bowls of grain, uttering prayers in voices barely above a murmur. But the true heartbeat of this district lies elsewhere, in rooms not designed for worship, but for writing. You approach a small doorway leading into a scribe's chamber. Inside, the world feels immediately quieter. The thick walls muffle the bustling city outside. The air is warm but still, carrying the faint, earthy aroma of damp clay. Along the floor sit low benches and reed baskets filled with tablets, some freshly inscribed, others hardened by the sun, their surfaces marked with tiny wedge-shaped impressions. This is the home of cuneiform, one of humanity's first writing systems. And the people who commanded it, the scribes, held a status shaped not by strength, but by knowledge. Picture a young scribe leaning over a soft clay tablet. His stylus, cut from a reed, rests lightly between his fingers. With each gentle press, he leaves a tidy impression, a wedge pointing left, another pointing downward. A cluster of marks that together represent numbers or grain or land or the name of a person who must deliver an offering. The rhythm of this work is calm, almost meditative. Press, lift, adjust, press again. Each movement is precise, each symbol a quiet contribution to the machinery of the city. This world stands in sharp contrast to the life of the laborer we experienced earlier. Here, the floor is clean and cool underfoot. The body is protected from the sun. The work is demanding, but in a different way, requiring memory, patience, and a steady hand rather than physical endurance. The scribes don't haul water from the canals or wade through thick silt. Instead, they track how much water flows into each canal. They record harvest quotas, temple offerings, labor obligations, and trade shipments arriving from distant lands. In a city fueled by agriculture and collective effort, their tablets acted as the city's memory, ensuring that nothing essential slipped through the cracks. Just beyond the chamber, you hear the quiet steps of a priest entering with a basket of offerings. He places it gently on a table, a handful of dates, a small clay seal, a few pieces of wool, each a small gift from a citizen fulfilling a religious duty. The scribe acknowledges him with a subtle nod, then begins marking the transaction into the clay. No words are exchanged. The atmosphere is one of calm routine. The room grows warm as the sun rises higher, though the thick walls keep the heat at bay. A slight breeze moves through a narrow window slit, stirring the faint dust on the floor. The scribes continue their work in unbroken concentration. It's easy to forget time here. The rhythm of writing becomes its own world. Outside, the temple complex stretches in orderly lines. Storage rooms filled with grain and wool are stacked neatly, guarded by sealed doors. Courtyards echo with subdued footsteps and the flutter of pigeons roosting in shaded corners. Priests confer softly near the altar, their conversations blending ritual concerns with administrative decisions. After all, temples were not just spiritual centers, they were economic engines. Managing land, animals, workers, and trade, they were the original corporations. Further inside, another room houses the archives. Shelves of clay tablets stand in rows, each shelf sagging slightly under the weight of hundreds of years of recorded life. A faint, earthy smell fills the space. This is history before history records of the everyday. Debts paid, marriages approved, disputes settled, land allotted. These archives form a quiet tapestry of human existence, captured not in grand stories or legends, but in the mundane transactions that kept a civilization alive. This is the very birth of paperwork, the origin of the bureaucracy that still runs our world today. Now imagine stepping outside into the inner courtyard, where a light breeze rises, carrying the distant sounds of the city vendors calling out softly, children laughing, the muffled thud of pots set on a hearth. Above, the ziggurat looms once again, its shadow stretching long and cool across the ground. But here in the temple district, life moves at a slower pace. People walk with deliberation. Words are spoken quietly, every action feels intentional, grounded in purpose. For the elite scribes and priests, this environment offered a stability and comfort that ordinary citizens would never experience. Their hands were clean, their days structured, their responsibilities intellectual and administrative. In a world shaped by dust, heat, and constant labor, their roles lifted them into a gentler existence, one built on knowledge rather than muscle. And yet, even here, the weight of duty remained. A single misrecorded shipment could disrupt a community. A misplaced seal might cause a dispute. A poorly timed ritual could be interpreted as displeasing the gods. This calm exterior was balanced by an underlying seriousness, a recognition that the order and prosperity of the entire city depended on their diligence. As you take one last look around the serene courtyard, the temple bells chime softly, signaling the close of another cycle. The sound echoes gently, spreading across rooftops and open streets, mingling with the evening breeze. The city exhales, settling once again into the familiar rhythm of ancient life. And now, as our journey through Mesopotamia nears its end, we will gently step back from the dust and clay, from the riverbanks and rooftops, from the legends and the everyday details, and return to the present, carrying with us the quiet knowledge of a world long gone. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey back in time. If you enjoyed stepping into this ancient world, please hit that like button and subscribe for more adventures into history. Now for the last part. Find a comfortable position, let your body relax, and allow your mind to drift back with me. We're traveling thousands of years into the past, to a land nestled between two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. This is Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, a place of sun-baked earth and the very first cities. As you settle in, imagine leaving our modern world behind. The hum of electricity fades, replaced by the gentle rustle of reeds and the distant bleating of sheep. Tonight, we're not just visiting this ancient land. We're going to explore why you, with all your modern knowledge, might struggle to survive even a single day here. It's a journey into a world both familiar and alien, where life was raw, demanding, and profoundly different. So close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and let's begin our journey. Let's start our day as an ordinary person would have. Your alarm clock is the first ray of sun filtering through a small opening in your clay brick house. You're not waking up on a soft mattress, but on a woven reed mat placed on a hard-packed mud floor. The air is already warm and thick with the smell of dust and cooking fires. Your first task isn't checking your phone, it's fetching water. You'd grab a heavy clay pot and walk, perhaps a long way, to the nearest canal or the river itself. This water isn't purified or filtered. It's murky, shared with animals, and you'd have to hope it wouldn't make you sick. This single simple task, which we complete by turning a tap, was a daily effort-filled chore. Now, think about breakfast. There are no supermarkets, no refrigerators. Your meal would be simple, likely a coarse barley flatbread, maybe with some onions or a handful of dates if you were lucky. The concept of a varied diet was a luxury few could afford. Most of your calories would come from grain, the foundation of Mesopotamian life. After this meager meal, your workday begins. If you're a farmer, you'd head to the fields under a relentlessly hot sun. The work is backbreaking. You're digging irrigation channels with a wooden spade, plowing with a heavy ox-drawn ard, and scattering seeds by hand. There's no machinery, no sunscreen, no comfortable work boots. The heat is oppressive, often soaring well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Dehydration and heat stroke would be constant dangers that we, accustomed to air conditioning, would be completely unprepared for. But what if you weren't a farmer? Perhaps you're a craftsman in the city of Ur or Babylon. Your workshop is a small, open-air space, crowded and noisy. You might be a potter, shaping clay for hours on a simple wheel, or a weaver, painstakingly creating textiles on a vertical loom. The work is repetitive and demands immense physical stamina. Your tools are made of wood, stone, or at best, soft bronze. A simple cut from a sharp tool could easily become infected, and without antibiotics, a minor injury could be a death sentence. There are no safety regulations, no workers' rights, just the constant pressure to produce goods for trade or as tribute to the temple. Your entire day, from sunrise to sunset, would be consumed by labor, leaving little time or energy for anything else. Now let's consider the social structure. Your life isn't entirely your own. At the top of the pyramid is the king, seen as a steward chosen by the gods. Below him are the powerful priests and priestesses who manage the great temples. These temples weren't just places of worship. They were the economic heart of the city. They owned vast tracts of land, employed thousands of people, and controlled the storage and distribution of grain. As an ordinary person, a significant portion of what you produced, be it grain from your field or pottery from your workshop, would go directly to the temple or the palace as a tax or offering. There was no concept of private enterprise as we know it. Your work served the community, yes, but more importantly, it served the gods and the king. Refusing to comply was unthinkable and would likely result in severe punishment or being cast out, which was equivalent to a death sentence. Imagine walking through the bustling city streets. They are narrow, unpaved, and winding. There is no sanitation system. Waste is thrown into the street, and the smell would be overwhelming to a modern nose. You'd share the crowded lanes with donkeys, goats, and fellow citizens. Privacy is a concept that barely exists. Most people lived in close quarters with their extended families, sharing small homes with little personal space. While this created a strong sense of community, the lack of personal freedom and solitude that we take for granted would be mentally exhausting. You are constantly surrounded, your actions observed, your life intertwined with everyone around you. Let's talk about health. The average life expectancy was low, perhaps around 35 or 40 years. Childhood diseases were common and often fatal. A toothache could lead to a life-threatening infection. Medical knowledge was a mixture of practical observation and magic. A doctor, or asu, might prescribe a plant-based poultice for a wound, but they would also perform incantations to drive away the evil demon they believed was causing the illness. If you fell seriously ill, your survival would depend more on luck and the strength of your own body than on any medical intervention. The constant low-level anxiety about health and survival is something we, in our world of modern medicine, can barely comprehend. We are insulated from the raw fragility of life that was a daily reality for them. As evening approaches, the city slowly quiets down. Families would gather for another simple meal, perhaps a barley porridge or a stew of vegetables. The darkness is absolute, broken only by the flickering light of small sesame oil lamps. There is no evening entertainment as we know it, no television, no books for personal reading, as literacy was reserved for a tiny elite of scribes. Instead, you might listen to a storyteller recounting the epic of Gilgamesh, a tale of heroes, gods, and the search for immortality. Or you might simply sit in the quiet, looking up at a sky brilliant with stars, unobscured by city lights. This might sound peaceful, but it was also a world with very little stimulation. A world where the rhythm of life was dictated by the sun and the seasons, slow and unchanging. Let's ascend now in our minds to the very center of the city, the ziggurat. This immense, stepped pyramid was the gateway to the heavens, the home of the city's patron god. As a commoner, you would likely never be allowed to climb its sacred steps. That was a privilege reserved for the highest priests. From its peak, they would observe the stars, mapping their movements to predict the future, to determine the most auspicious times for planting and harvesting, for festivals and for war. The universe was seen as a place governed by powerful, often unpredictable deities. A flood, a drought, or a plague was not a natural disaster, but a sign of divine anger. Life was lived in a state of constant negotiation with these powerful forces, a life of ritual and sacrifice designed to keep the gods happy and maintain cosmic order. This deep-seated belief in a world animated by divine will is fundamentally different from our modern scientific worldview. As our journey through ancient Mesopotamia draws softly to a close, allow the images of this distant world to settle like dust drifting down after a long day. The clay houses, the fields stretching along quiet canals, the towering ziggurats rising toward a pale sky, and the calm chambers where scribes pressed tiny marks into wet tablets. All these scenes now soften, fading into the gentle background of your mind. You've walked through the life of an ordinary laborer, waking on a mud brick floor and stepping into a world shaped by sun, dust, and duty. You've wandered the shadowed halls of kings who believed themselves touched by the divine, listening to legends carved from equal parts history and longing. You've climbed the mysterious steps of the ziggurat, feeling the quiet wind brush against your skin as the city stretched below. And you've observed the subtle power of the temple elite, whose careful hands and quiet minds shaped the daily rhythm of civilization. Together, these worlds reveal why you, living in the comfort of modern life, might struggle to survive even a single day in the first great cities of human history. The heat, the labor, the constant demands of temple and king, the fragile balance between river and land. It was a life of endurance and responsibility, marked by a resilience we often underestimate. And yet there is something comforting in this ancient rhythm. A slow, predictable cadence. A world where the routines of dawn and dusk guided everything. A world where people found meaning in the steady repetition of tasks, in the communal effort to survive, in the quiet hope that the rivers would continue to flow. As you return gently to your present surroundings, you may carry with you a soft appreciation for the countless generations who shaped the foundations of our world. Their hands built the first walls, carved the first words, measured the first fields. Their stories, mythical or mundane, still echo in our languages, our cities, our shared sense of time. So take a slow breath, feel the familiar comfort around you. Notice how different your world is from theirs, and how fortunate we are to drift into sleep with a peace, safety, and softness they could scarcely imagine. Whenever you're ready, you can let your thoughts drift away completely, following the slow, soothing flow of the rivers that once nourished the cradle of civilization. Good night, and rest well.